Okay, is that you, Laura? Oh, you're muted.
Okay.
Okay, there you are.
I'm trying to find my webcam. There we go.
Okay, and I don't know if you know how to tell who's logged in, but over in that control panel, there's a box that says attendees. And under staff, it shows everybody that's logged in. So Lisa and Dave and Adam are all logged in.
Okay. Okay, very good. All right, I see the polls here. So I just click one and I launch it. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So I didn't go through and make everybody organizers because they already logged in. So, but I think you're the main presenter, is that right?
Well, I'm the moderator effectively, so I'm showing like 2 slides, and then I want everybody else to get a chance to do their thing. So if I want them to be able to show something on their screen,
Yeah, you would. Yeah, you'd right click and do make presenter.
Okay. Okay. All right. Dave, can you hear me? Okay.
He nodded yes.
How about my audio? Is it okay this morning?
It is, yeah.
I'm trying to get rid of a little bit of the background light, but well, maybe.
Sure.
And I'm in the office. It's an unusual spot to be. So.
Yeah, it certainly is. I ended up being at home just because it kind of worked out a little bit better for a few things, and so but I kind of flipped myself around, so at least I've got something better than my kitchen behind my view. So I did have Adam share whether there was a couple questions. I think that he was a little bit more comfortable maybe kind of on a kickoff. So and so the rest of them I kind of listed out. And what I'm going to do is just show like the intro slide and then like everybody's bio pictures. And then I'm going to pull the PowerPoint off so people don't see the questions. I'll kick off with the polling question, and then I'll dive right into our kind of list of questions and kind of go from there. So as long as you've got that, I think somewhere for reference point, I won't show people our direct questions there, so they don't see those.
Can you guys hear me this time?
Yeah.
Hey, good morning, Dale.
Good morning, Dale.
Adam.
Hey,
Hello.
Adam.
My view.
Hi, Laura.
So.
Switch my view.
Anywho, so if I need to switch around, because I think some of us were set up as organizers and then some of us were set up as just panelists, I'll just switch over to you and I'll just go make presenter. But I think everybody else should be able to see everybody else if on the screen with our webcams up. So hopefully it'll all go smoothly. I've got the polls set up over here. So I got the question this morning, or somebody asked the question about who was going to give out the CPE certificate. And I guess we can, from my firm, I can just hand it out that way. And then whoever does is kind of like the moderator or whatever for the next time around, then we can just kind of switch it around. But I've got the polling questions to keep track of like who logs in and answers those.
Hey, Laura, did you already click start on the webinar? It looks like it might be webinar.
Did I? Do I need to? How do I stop that? This morning, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit record. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank you for your time this morning, and I appreciate you logging in. We'll continue to have some people logging in. But I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Laura Matajewski. I'm principal at HLB Gross Collins, and I'll be your moderator today for today's webinar on data analytics, discovery, implementation, and management for success. We're going to have just one more slide come up today, and then I'm going to just switch it over to see everybody's screens for the panelists today. But I'd like to go ahead and do a quick introduction to our panelists. See here, there we go. Whoop, sorry, going too quickly there. So as I said, I'm Laura Matajewski, Principal Manufacturing and Distribution Supply Chain Practice Leader at HLB Gross Collins here in the lovely and warm city of Atlanta, Georgia. Also very fortunate to be members of HLB USA and HLB International, the 12th largest independent global advisory and accounting network. Today we have 3 panelists joining us. First off, we have Dave Glennon, partner with Eide Bailly, based up in North Dakota. Dave provides accounting services for a variety of clients, including SEC registered entities, closely held commercial enterprises, insurance companies, pools, and trusts. His client work includes engagements with large multi-location organizations, and he performs financial statement calculation processes related to inventory costing, labor, and burden allocation methods, amongst his other advisory and consulting services. He has a deep specialization in the manufacturing and supply chain industry and is a published author on various topics in the industry. Next, I'd like to introduce Adam Handel. Adam is a technology consulting manager with Eide Bailly, based in Montana. With over 20 years of consulting and internal IT operations experience, Adam assists companies with planning, budgeting, and implementing technologies that support business operations and organizational goals. Finally, last on our panel, we have Dale Tuttle. Dale is a partner and practice leader for Withum Digital Practice. At Withum, he helps operate the firm's cloud transformation business and works closely with other partners to grow cloud-focused IT consulting. His areas of specialty in this business unit include Office 365, data analytics, process automation, and UI/UX consulting through services of digital innovation, business and management consulting, digital and technology transformation, data and artificial intelligence. We're going to kick off this morning with a polling question, and today we're going to have a total of 4 polling questions. Please make sure to keep track of your polling questions. We'll do that as well too, and we've got 4 of them in order for you to get your hours worth of CPE credit, and we will share the CPE credit certificate with you based on your participation today within 2 weeks of today's session. So I'm going to launch our first polling question here today. All right. Let's see, make sure that launched okay. All right, so our first question is, have you seen a shift in your data analytics use since COVID-19? So we've got answers of yes, no, or about the same. Let's see, we're collecting responses here. Interesting. So today we're going to really focus on not only just behind the scenes, there's of course the impacts that we've seen from COVID-19 and how businesses are functioning through that, but really going through the process and exercise of understanding the data available and the opportunities to take advantage of and utilize and mine that data. So it looks like we've got our responses, and let's see, we've got a total of 39% said yes, you have seen a shift in your data analytics use. About 18% said no, and about 43% said about the same as prior to COVID-19. Let's see here. Shared that for everybody to see that. So good. Well, I think we're going to have a good conversation then today. All right. Wonderful. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and kick off our first question of the day. And that question is, manufacturing and distribution companies are facing uncertainty during these pandemic times, and we understand data analytics are becoming an essential tool for forecasting and decision making. I'd like to kick this question off to start off with you, Dave, and say, what types of data should manufacturers and distributors focus on capturing to calculate metrics for managing risk and decision making?
Thanks, Laura, and good morning, everybody. Nice to be virtually with you today for this discussion about data analytics. And Laura, it's great that you kicked off the discussion with a polling question. It's really good to get the pulse on what everybody is seeing in their business. Your specific question about what kind of data should manufacturers and distributors be focused on. So it's quite a broad question, but I kind of think of it in three buckets, if you will. You've got your customer demand, and for the 40% of the participants that responded that yes, they're spending more time with data analytics. Think about customer demand in the last 3 or 4 months. What changes have occurred in that data set? Are you capturing the way that customer demand has changed? Can you take advantage of certain pricing opportunities or needing to scale back pricing if the market is changing substantially? What about regionalization and recent media coverage of hotspots and areas that have seen spike in cases? Are you capturing customer location information? So I think of it, as I said, 3 buckets. The first of which is your customers. And on the other end of the spectrum, supply chain and your those that are feeding raw materials into your business or suppliers for distributors. What kind of insight do you have? Have your lead times substantially changed in the resulting from the pandemic? And then finally, the third bucket, and Dale and Adam will just get your input too, but operationally, internally, as you look at your business or your company, have you thought about what productivity slips you've seen, or has productivity increased? Are you able to track employee absentee rates as employees might face results from COVID? So I put them into those 3 buckets: customers, supply chain, and then internally and operationally is the way I think of it.
Absolutely. Great points, Dave. Dale, I'd like to kick that over to you to get your feedback as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to at least put them into some buckets. You can even, I like those 3 buckets. At a minimum, you need 2, which is my own operations, then everything else. What I do see in data analytics, and this is again purely anecdotal, right? This is what I say. I don't have any survey data to back this up, but typically what I see when I go to the conferences, well, when we used to, is there's a focus on data collected from the process itself, which is great because there's a lot of things to mine. But the flip side of that is, are you neglecting really analyzing your operational data, even your financial data, or anything about running your firm? The manufacturing process itself, or your supply chain, whatever, those external data points, there's a lot of focus on that, as there should be, but just don't forget to Dave's point, your own internal operational data. That stuff needs to be included in your analysis.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree wholeheartedly. Adam, do you have anything to add on to that?
From a much higher level, I would just say, yeah, start simple, focus on the data that's easy and available to access. A lot of times it can be very easy to try to boil the ocean, or to try to grab all your data, do everything at once. You end up with confusion or different sources of the truth. Start easy, identify those maybe repeated processes that you can reproduce using analytics to build trust with what it is you are gathering. And then don't forget to kind of do analytics on your analytics. You can see who's leveraging what you're rolling out and the changes maybe that they've made, to use that as a success story to incite that behavior in others.
Absolutely. Yeah, creating opportunities, and then determining those kind of new benchmarking, I think, too, under COVID right now, and what is going to be meaningful for you to continue to drive that success. Absolutely. And a quick note for our attendees, I am keeping an eye on the chat box, so if you have a question, please go ahead and make sure to drop it over there. You'll see me looking to the side a little bit just to make sure that we capture that. So I do want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to share their questions. And if you don't get a chance during the session today, of course, we will be sending some follow-ups as well too. So the next question that we've got on the docket is considering manufacturing and distribution processes on the facility floor. So kind of bucket one, and then bucket two, as we've kind of talked about just recently, operations and finance components. How does a company determine what data they do have? What steps should they take to assess their existing data resources? I'd love to kick this question off with you, Dale. And if you have any practical examples you can share, yes, on
right.
gathering data inventory, we'd love to hear that.
We usually start out with that. In fact, I'm doing that right now with a client where we have to inventory, and they go, well, we know what we have, and we go, well, we don't. So we need to see where those data are. But here, the flip side of that, I think anyway, is once you see where the data are, but how you're actually using it, I think we might even talk about this later. You may have a sophisticated data system, but more often than not, what are people doing? They're going to be emailing the spreadsheet around. So it's not only the data system, so you need to inventory those, but also how are data being, collaborated upon and shared. Because there's a couple of nuances there. What you'd like to do with whatever analytical tool you may have at your disposal, you usually want to connect to the data source. And most tools will let you ingest data from multiple systems. It used to be a big deal. I'm old enough to remember when it was a huge deal. You had to consolidate your data somewhere and then connect to it and analyze it. Most of the tools now will connect to multiple data sources, ingest the data you want from those systems, and then you can start doing the magic stuff, the data sciencey stuff. But you need to know how to connect to those things, and also how are people actually sharing those data. I think we talk about spreadsheets later, but spreadsheets, even if you have a sophisticated Oracle or SQL Server data warehouse, people are typically generating reports, getting an Excel spreadsheet, CSV format usually actually, and emailing that around. And we need to know that, because understanding that flow of data from system to end user is really important.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you can start sharing data around and not realize that either that data has now effectively become out of date if it's not been captured correctly, or they are, misconstruing what that information really is, and it's to try to make it work for them in something that may not be a beneficial approach.
Yep.
I'd love to get your feedback as well too on this, on the question about determining what the data is you've got. How can you assess those data resources?
Yeah, I think Dale hit the nail on the head there when you mentioned looking at not just your systems, but your processes and your people as well. We were just working with a client that has a data warehouse. They've got great reporting, but they also had an individual that was pulling data from multiple spreadsheets, populating her own. They called it the Betsy report because she was the owner of that. This was one of those things that was completely missed when they went to do their, their data catalog and create their reports, because she was doing it all. Well, when Betsy became expecting and wanted to take her time off, a little flag went off, and somebody said, "Oh my goodness, she's not going to be doing this for the next however many months." So you have to think of the people, you have to think of the processes that they are doing as well, to make sure you catalog that too. You include all the owners of all your different data, get the entire organization involved, even if it's just key individuals from each part of the organization, get the whole organization involved. As you're doing it, identify roadblocks. Roadblocks can be people, processes, vendors even. A lot of vendors think they have the greatest reports and you should just live and die by them, but you need to do something else with them to augment the value. And so getting the data out of those systems can be difficult. And then I would just order those data sources by, the difficulty, or prioritize them by business goals.
Absolutely.
Not to go off piste, but what we do in that case, Adam, Dave and Laura, is we use a process mapping tool when we go through these engagements, and that maps out the items you just you just mentioned, you can always boil it down to people, process, and technology. Then it spits out a report categorized by those buckets, and you know what data are being produced and who's consuming it and everything along the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have somebody from the audience that tossed a quick question out that I'd like to jump to before we get to our next polling question. They asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the high end, how do your contacts leverage data in determining planned maintenance on the line? Does someone want to jump in on that one?
Your turn, Dave.
I was going to say I'd be happy to jump in with a few comments there, and I think we may even have a discussion about planned maintenance and predictive analytics a little bit later, so we can probably go a little bit deeper. But capturing your data so you can, I really see it in two buckets. Understand when preventative maintenance, if you're focused on that, when's the right time to do it, not only for the machine or the process that you are going to perform the maintenance on, but seasonality wise within your business. Is now a good time to take line A down because the product that line A produces is got a little bit of a lull in this next 2-week time period, and that's the right time to do preventative maintenance. So it's putting the demand and the business needs together with what you're learning about the life expectancy of the piece that you are looking at doing some maintenance on.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I don't want to steal anybody's thunder for that is a question that we've got for later on, but I appreciate your feedback on that, Dave. So it sounds like on a scale of kind of 1 to 10, it's a pretty high number then for your contacts and what they're doing to attempt to try and get ahead of this planned maintenance in order to remain efficient.
Yeah, I didn't really answer the number of the question on a scale 1 to 10. I think my reply would be utopia, right? So that would be a 10 if you did all those pieces and put it together. What's really happening with the clients I work with? Yeah, it's probably somewhere in the 3 or 4 range to be.
That's exactly what I was just going to say, Dave. Is I think everyone talks about it. In fact, we'll address this later. But everyone talks about it, but it's actually kind of hard to do. Because each machine is reporting its own thing. But more importantly, the process itself. If the machine comes out of the process, what happens? Doesn't matter if it's on predictive maintenance or not. You've had to figure that out, the impacts, right? And so it's more complicated than the machine feeding data about its performance. It's about that machine's performance in the process and what happens when it's gone. So you need a process mapping tool or an understanding of your process to see the impacts of bringing it down for predictive maintenance. So I would give it a low score about people actually doing it. Some people are, don't get me wrong, but theory or practice is catching up with theory.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, I think it's going to kind of come in part and parcel to part of our discussion later on, where it's the amount of investment you've been doing in all of the technology and all these tools. It's kind of that question of what are you doing with that? What are you capturing and how are you effectively figuring out how to utilize that to figure out these breakpoints? So, but thank you to the audience for tossing that question out. I've got our next polling question coming up. All right, this is a yes or no. So does your accountant assist with data analytics projects, or do you outsource for this support in the area? All right, I just launched that poll. So does your accountant assist with data analytics projects, or do you outsource for support in this area? Ooh, getting some interesting responses here. Ah, okay. I'll leave that go just for a second longer. Normally I'm on the giving side of answers and polls, so it's kind of nice to see. I think we're almost there on, we've got a good number of people that have voted in, so I'm gonna go ahead and close it out, and I'm going to share those results. So it looks like 57% of our attendees today utilized their accountant to assist with data analytics or outsourcing, and the others say no, so they're doing it internally or something else. So those are interesting results. Adam, I'd like to kind of get your take on that response back from our attendees for utilizing outside assistance or your accountant. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I would say, I want to make sure I'm off mute here. I would say probably about 4 or 5 years ago, this would maybe be flipped. Probably more the CIO role or the technology department would own that data analytics project and run with it. What we found is that things became very siloed at that point. IT really knew and cared about certain aspects of the business and focused on those when it came to the data. More and more we're seeing, and there's a healthcare study. Realize this isn't healthcare. I've been able to do analytics across several different industries, but there's an interesting healthcare study that has showed the ownership of analytics projects and the trend switch from, and I think it's applicable to all industries, including manufacturing, distributing, and that's the switch from the IT CIO role, handing that off to a shared responsibility with accounting or the CFO, or the ownership at that CFO level. There are really some business principles and understanding of what it takes to change one item on a balance sheet or an income statement, the impact that has to the business, that the accountants can say and really help drive that change throughout the business. And that's what we've been using analytics for, is to really change behavior. And I think that's just a critical spot for ownership and adoption to start, is with the accounting group. That's where all the trusted numbers come from as well, or at least they should be trusted, right? It is the accounting group. So it's a great place to start.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adam. That brings us into our next question. Significant technology investments by manufacturers and distributors has brought the capability to create and store massive amounts of data. What approaches do you see companies taking to capture data from operating in silos to integrating it into processes to enhance systems operability? And actually, not to pick on you, Adam, but I know we talked about this previously, but I wanted to kick off this question with you for some of your thoughts.
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier, you have to engage the whole organization, get buy-in from all the leaders in your organization. Not all of your leaders will be finance minded. And so you want different perspectives. You have to have a strategy, I believe, of both exploratory and explanatory analytics. So think almost oysters and pearls. You're going to be diving into your data and bringing up a whole bunch of different oysters just to see what pearls you might find. Today's technology allows you to store and handle massive amounts of data. So that's a lot what that is like. You have to create a culture that data is treated like an asset. Get buy-in from your organization on that. Some of the ways that we've seen that done really well, we have disparate systems, right, that tell us different information, is using analytics and then embedding that data from our analytics reports back into other systems. So we might put a report that talks about timesheets into our ERP system, or we might get line data and put that somewhere else, so that that knowledge is distributed throughout the organization. It creates a lot of aha or questioning moments where you get some good ideas about change that you can drive with analytics.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great points there, as well as embedding data in other systems. Dale, do you have any thoughts on that? The question of, okay.
What I'm seeing fairly new, and there's a couple of our larger clients that are doing this, they've set up data centers of excellence, essentially to be that clearinghouse, because a couple of things happen, to Adam's point. A lot of times in a larger organization, there'll be different systems, right? There's different, either the machines are collecting data on their own, finance has got their data in one place, someone else, some other business unit's got their data someplace else. So a data center of excellence can help acquire the data that are required for the analysis. But it even starts with a fundamental question, and it's not a trick question, but it's deceptively simple sounding, and that is, what do you need to know? And so we start out with that. What do you want to know? I have 2 projects going on right now where that's what we're trying to uncover. And it maybe you know what you want to know, that there's a gap. Then the other cool thing, which Adam alluded to, is because there's so much data out there now, you can engage in what's called inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning just means, hey, I kind of can figure out what I need to know. Inductive goes, I have no idea what's in my data. Let the machine go figure it out. And by the way, that is, everyone asks me about that. This is like predictive maintenance, though. Sounds great, but it's not super easy to do. But we're kind of getting there, where if you have tons of data, you can mash it all up and you can let loose a robot, and it'll go tell you, here's what I see. And it may be crap. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes.
But it's getting a lot better. That's a big fishing expedition. That's like going on a bass fishing tournament. You don't know what you're going to get, but you let the machine go out and fish for you, and it's kind of cool. And that's what the TV commercials tell you. And we're kind of climbing that mountain right now, but it's starting to happen because, especially in manufacturing, I think manufacturing is a leader in this area. Your machines are collecting massive amounts of data. And we're getting to the point that, if you have a large ERP system, it's going to just start mining the stuff for you. It's capable of doing that. And more and more people are starting to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate that. I think that has continued to be one of the initial questions that I get. I know from my clients is, I've got data here, 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 and here. How do I figure out how to integrate that and make it start to work for me in a way that's going to give me answers that I can work towards solutions? My next question is, companies have been pivoting as quickly as possible to react to the dynamic shifts occurring in the economy and market under COVID-19. Can you share some examples of how companies are capturing and analyzing data to facilitate strategic decision making? And kind of give us a little insight of what level of involvement your team has been taking with your clients to facilitate this. I'd like to kick Dave off on that one.
Sure, I'll make a few comments. And you think about I mentioned it in the first few comments I made, but the demand for certain industries is just skyrocketed. If you were in the RV manufacturing industry, for example, a client that I work with in that space, and gearing up for a seasonal summertime where demand is high, and then along comes COVID and nobody wants to travel and people are looking for RVs. The strategy that they had laid out for the summer fundamentally is the same. You want to produce and sell products, but the demand is just off the charts. With having the right data and being able to have some insight into market information has allowed this client that I work with to tailor their production. Are they going to make Class A units or Class D units and scale the demand? The strategy is, as Dale said, you constantly want to be monitoring it. And do you know what you don't know is kind of the question that a lot of clients that I work with want answered. And it's a tough one, because the strategy that you lay out today and build systems around might not be the same strategy you have in 3 months. So being nimble, I guess that's maybe the moral of the story, or a long way to say you need to be nimble, and having the right data and information, insight to that allows you to be nimble.
Absolutely.
Laura, one thing that came to mind is, I just saw this recently. There's people now, are businesses, manufacturing, all kinds of businesses, now they have to look at other data. We have business recovery teams, and we're being asked to help do lots of stuff that they weren't prepared to do, like distance, right? Their PPP status. All these COVID-related data points now need to be collected. Sometimes you have to, But a lot of businesses, this is, we just want to know, and so now you have more data related to operating in the pandemic than, you weren't preparing to do that in January, February. Now all of a sudden you have to do it.
Dale,
Absolutely.
something as simple as have an employee log into a CRM tool to start the day. Have you been
Yeah.
exposed to anybody? Have you traveled? What's your temp? If you're tracking all that information, what was the need for that 3 months ago, 4 months ago? It didn't exist.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and regular businesses are collecting this. Colleges are doing it too, not manufacturing. But I'm getting these letters from my 2 college kids right now about they have to use an app every day, right, to send in how you're feeling, right? And those data are then going somewhere and need to be analyzed and alerts. But businesses, especially if you're running a manufacturing line, they're starting to do the same thing, right? So you have to collect and analyze completely different data now.
Absolutely. Yeah, Adam, would you like to share on that? Oh, I think you might be muted, Adam.
My apologies there. I was just going to piggyback off of what Dave said on the flexibility. I work with a technical apparel company that has relied upon trade shows very heavily in the past, where all their sales folks and everybody meet to figure out, the trends, the planning and demand for each of their products so they can start that manufacturing process for product that might be sold and delivered 6 months later. Well, without those trade shows happening right now, that's their main data point for their demand and planning. They've had to pivot and shift, look at other data sources, do things differently, and collect data from different types of events. You really have to be flexible and start looking at other data.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure many of you have seen, and some of our attendees as well too. If you've got whatever type of financial banking relationship you may have as well, they're asking for the stuff that I think several have been doing before, but maybe just not in the same context, the old 13-week cash flow, which I've had one person go, 13 weeks, why is it 13 weeks? I'm like, it's a quarter. But effectively doing that, and when we've talked about looking at forecasting and kind of just really blowing out of the water what was done at the beginning of the year with expectations, all of these data points in here and how they're being captured now, what have we done differently under COVID that we should be picking up that's going to be very meaningful to how we project out those forecasts there. I think all of those components are very crucial to that. So data, as much as it's always been important, is now even more so, because we're having to feel comfortable when we do those analysis for our client that we're understanding the pieces that are coming in, and vice versa for them as well too, that they're being able to answer the questions that are going to facilitate making a meaningful and quote unquote, right-sized projection for the coming weeks. So thank you, everybody. All right, well, we are at the point of having our third polling question. And that question is, are you currently investing in any new data analytics tools or software? Yes, no, or considering but do not know where to start. Okay, looks like, let's see, a little over half of our people attending that have voted in. Oh, we're getting an interesting mix here. It's almost kind of even across the board. See, we'll give it just another minute. But I think this question is very telling in the sense of, where is everybody at right now? Because I think as we've shifted to this more virtual world, as much as manufacturing still is being done and has to be done in person, there's the thought process of, is the data, is the technology we have that we have invested in working for us like we expected it to? Okay, so I think I've got our poll here, so I'm going to share the results on that. And we can see 32% that said, yes, you're currently investing in new data analytics tools or software. 36% said no, and 32% considered, but not sure where to start. So we've got a kind of even mix across the board here. Very interesting. So considering that, I'm going to go ahead and close out that poll there. I'd like to dive into something that we touched on earlier, and I'm going to kick this question off with you, Dale. But when we're looking at situations now where we're trying to determine what can we do with this data, how can we make it work for us, one of the critical points is detecting problems and finding a way to put in early warning metrics that are going to be critical to keeping you proactive to determine when failures can occur. So the whole predictive analytics and machine learning process. So could you share with us how you can establish parameters in capturing data to assist in getting ahead of these breaks and hopefully focusing on then reducing financial impact on operations?
I think so. It's interesting for how we've seen things change. We used to think that you could have someone who just knows like an analytics package, like Power BI or Tableau, and they would figure it all out. So what we figured out that was not good enough. You need those people, tool jockeys, if you will, right? They know how to make that tool really work. But we started to use data scientists, people who understand data, how to combine data, and there's a two-part process there too. It's how do you actually combine data to make it different types of data into a common format. And now you don't necessarily have to do that with some of the new tools, but it's still the most common thing to do. Is essentially just force data into one area, and you have to transform it. So there's that part. And then there's how do you make sense of all these combined data? Tool jockeys don't generally know how to do that. They know what to do once the data are accessible to the tool. And then they can build connectors to it. And then someone says, I need to know X, Y, or Z. They'll make the tool do that. But what we do is we augment those people with the data scientists who understand what they want to know, and then what data need to be collected, how the data need to be shaped and modeled to answer the business questions. So think about two types of people. A person who understands data, and they may understand the tool as well, that's fine, but often we find these are two different people. But then someone who knows how to make the tool then interact with the data that the data scientist, he or she has created for the tool to receive and analyze. So that's kind of how to be more effective and productive and learn more from your data is kind of combining those two things.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I think it's reinvigorating, I think, training and finding those people that are out on the floor there that are working with the machines that are going to be the ones that are going to be very open and receptive to gaining that knowledge for you, because you place a lot of reliance on them as well too, and figuring out how to get that data for your decision making.
And there's going to be a lot of different perspectives on that. Something we haven't talked about too much, but is that I may need to know something, you may need to know something else, and the data to get to that knowledge may be different. And it may be the same data repository, but different types of data. The data need to be shaped and modeled differently to support whatever business needs, especially a bigger firm with different business units, right? You have marketing, you have HR, you have operations, you have the manufacturing process folks. There's a lot of stuff out there flying around, and everyone has a different perspective on what they need, and you have to figure out how to get it and get it efficiently and quickly and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Let's see, Dave, do you have any insights to share on that?
Yeah, I would certainly add to what Dale said, and maybe draw back to a comment that I heard Adam make earlier about it really needs to become part of your culture, and you need to start small. As Dale alluded to, the different buckets or business units, maybe you find marketing uses some data set to achieve some sales goals, and that's victory for them. And operationally, they're using a different data set to improve efficiency 1% or 2%, and you just make little successes along the way that overall, when you look back as an organization, you realize you've changed a culture to having data be important and shape that strategy, or help you be successful in the strategy that you've set out there.
Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Adam?
You know, in response to a little bit of what Dale mentioned, there's a great article out there by the Harvard Business Review on what's your data strategy. And it talks about the amount of time you spent doing each part of an analytics project. And they mention in that 80% of an analyst's time is spent discovering and preparing the data. So not so much the visuals, not so much the tool jockeys, but really collecting and organizing the data in a usable way for the entire organization. Just want to throw that out there as kind of a level set or an expectation that, it's more than creating a pivot table or a bar graph. It's really organizing your data in a way and leveraging your data in a way that you can get value out of it that is beyond a maintenance schedule or a calendar item.
Correct. No, that makes perfect sense. Creating ownership around it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. So the next question I've got is, we've been inundated, as we've talked a little bit this morning, about the terminology of big data, the smart factories that are out there, the IoT, the Internet of Things, and industry kind of 4.0. Maybe we've moved on to 4.5 now. So considering the current trends in data analytics, where do you see critical investment in that kind of financial operational side versus the manufacturing processes to enhance capturing the quote unquote right data for decision making? I'd like to kick that off with you, Adam.
Sorry, my screen kind of froze up on me here. What do I see as technology wise as far as capturing that data and storing it for later use? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So much like Dale mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of tools that allow you to now connect directly to the data. Start reporting on it immediately. What we're starting to see a trend is as some of these tools are growing, it's been more and more important to store that data in a centralized spot. So creating a data lake, and I might be getting a little technical here, but storing that data in a data lake where really it's just the raw data. You're not making any sort of changes to it at all, that you can then hand off to your data scientists to start to build those data warehouses. And the idea behind that is you want to create a system that allows all your users to become those analysts. You want to create a version of the truth with your data warehouse, with all of your business logic tied up into your data directly there. So your end users don't have to learn a tool, and then also how to do those calculations within the tool as well. So what we're seeing is a lot more of a trend of storing that data, using newer tools like Snowflake, what have you, to warehouse and do some compute calculations on it. That also then is a direct delivery to the end user for the end users to do their own analytics with.
Okay, great. Dale, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, I think especially on smaller, small and medium-sized businesses, manufacturers, I think they struggle with this because the machines, again, I'm drawing a lot of this from the last couple of conferences I spoke at. The machines focusing on that type of data are collecting massive amounts of data. I don't think people are generally using it effectively, right? So these machines are now being built to collect data and report on it. So what they're doing, it's either turned off because they don't know what to do with it, or it's streaming data somewhere, maybe onto a local storage unit, or maybe even feeding it into a storage network, a storage device on your own network, or even the cloud. People are underutilizing it. They're not sure what to do with it. So the capability is there. What you do after that is kind of the missing piece. That's what I'm seeing. And this is an infrastructure. This is a data infrastructure issue, so to speak, where there's massive amounts of data. The devices are collecting it. What do you do with it? Where do I put it? To Adam's point, the good news is more than ever, there are lots of tools out there now, mostly cloud-based, that'll let you at least collect it and store those data. Even if you're not quite sure what to do with it yet, if you put it into a data lake or put it into one of these data tools that are in Azure or AWS or IBM or Oracle, everyone's got a data cloud solution. I mean, SAP, they are actually focused on this. We're not an SAP vendor, but I've always been impressed with SAP HANA. But yeah, the thing now is the infrastructure. What do you do with all that stuff? And a lot of people are underutilizing the raw data collection capabilities that their devices have.
Okay. Yeah.
Although I'm not sure why my fridge needs to be collecting all this data on me right now, but I'm sure it is. It's always watching.
How many times you open the door to grab another snack during COVID? I know
Yeah.
mine's probably got massive amounts of information on that for sure.
It just texted me asking me if I was hungry.
Oh boy. All right. Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to invest in that level of smartness. But no, all great points, gentlemen. I think again, there's so much data out there. We've got to focus on, knowing the information that we do have at our fingertips. How do we get that, and how are we able to work with, as you mentioned, I think the term data scientists. So that's really working with your accountants and the experts that understand the software so that you can feel like you're mining the right information to pull in for analysis there versus just doing a data dump and going, well, I got all this stuff, this is great. And I think that's part of the questions that we're hoping to try and help give some a little bit of enlightenment to today, is what do we do with all of this, and how do we make sure that what we're looking at is really the right and meaningful information. So thank you. Let's see. Our next question today is, technology is continuing to shift and grow at a pace faster than companies can begin to digest and process what's next. What data analytic trends do you see nationally? And then, because so many of our businesses are now so interconnected globally, as becoming key as companies continue to handle and process all these unprecedented amounts of data? Who'd like to jump on first on that one? I'll toss that out to you, Adam.
Yeah, I can contribute a little bit there. As far as, so what I was going to mention here is there's a lot of sharing of data that happens nowadays too, whether it be health data or PPE or just several different data sources. Vendors like Snowflake and others will have a data marketplace where your data can be sanitized and shared. Maybe you want to do this with your direct competitors to kind of, weigh yourself next to them, if you will, to kind of see the health of your organization, or use their data to augment your own. We're seeing quite a bit of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Dave, how about you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's would qualify as a global trend, but it's to tie off what Dale said, and that is companies that are doing a good job in this space just make better use with the data that they've got. I think we're all familiar with Amazon, and you've watched what they've been able to do with the data that they collect on, Laura, the last order that you placed. Do you need to reorder? Now bring that down to a manufacturer that has one plant and one facility. Certainly you wouldn't have processes that are that extravagant, but can you capture something similar and build out trends on what your customers might need to reorder 3 or 6 months from now? So scaling some of those things that you've seen big, broad, global companies do real well to something that you can apply within your own business is a trend that we're seeing.
Absolutely.
I'd add, Laura, that one thing that I think is very important and very positive is very advanced tools essentially are available to almost anybody now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So once you kind of figure out what you need to know and all that great stuff, even if you're a small manufacturing firm, very, very advanced tools are available to you. Usually, almost always a cloud-based tool. And even artificial intelligence. Now, I'm not sure if you need it, but let's say you think you have a use case to leverage some fairly advanced analytical tools that are AI based. You can just use a service provided by AWS or Azure, using just those two as an example. And it's amazing. So if you have a data person on staff, even if you're a small firm, you can do really cool stuff now that you couldn't do even a couple years ago. And so that's something to keep in mind. It's not just the Amazons of the world. They're leading in the use because they got the money and the brain power. But then what Amazon has done, in particular, they've been a leader in this, is once they figure out and they create the tools that they need to do their job, they're like, hey, we can sell this capability back to our customers, and that's what they do. So you can get on AWS, and there's a tool that will analyze your data and apply advanced AI. Now, you may not, I always caveat this, you may not need that level, but all these cool tools and stuff are there, and they're on AWS, and they're on Microsoft Azure and other platforms, and it's really a game changer.
Absolutely.
You really have to be creative and curious about maybe how or what we can use those for. It used to be you'd have to invest in almost $100,000 infrastructure just to be able to do AI, and now you can. It's almost like you rent it for 10 minutes from Amazon and you're done.
Now you just need a credit card.
That's right.
And you have these tools. Now don't forget to shut off the machine or the service, by the way, because that's the meter running, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, no, and I think this is kind of helping us give some insight to our attendees today that there are a lot of tools out there that you may not have thought are available to you. And I think, again, it's really reaching out and working with, your accountant and, or the team that you've been working with, and getting them to really kind of lay out for you their thoughts, knowing the data that you have there. What are going to be some of those tools that you can look at from a cost efficiency standpoint of beginning to implement without feeling overwhelmed? Because I think that becomes a large factor in it. Is I've got all this data, I want to do this, and then you start doing research and you're just inundated with the number of resources and going, well, which one's the right one to start with? So I think, again, it sounds like working with each of you and is going to be a great starting point to help give some brevity and some transparency to what's the right next step. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. We've got one more polling question coming up here. Let's see here. I'm going to launch that. And this last polling question today is, would you be interested in further webinars on data analytics to take a deeper dive on specific hot topics, industry developments, tools, and best practices? Okay. Ooh, I'm seeing a resounding yes there. Yeah, I know today we kind of hit a high level on things, but we are looking forward to continuing this series on data analytics and taking a deeper dive. So we appreciate, all right, it looks like we've got most everybody in there, and we've got a resounding 100%. I did not see a single no in there. So this is great feedback for us, because we're going to continue in our next webinar in this series and taking a deeper dive on that. So we appreciate your feedback on that one. Let's see here. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to hit each of our panelists and get you to share just, anything else that you'd like to kind of give our audience before we wrap up for the day. We are going to be wrapping up right on time, so this has been perfect. So I'll start off with you, Dave.
Just want to thank everybody for spending some time today, and just would encourage you to think creatively about the data that you do collect, and what strategy you've got in place and how that can be useful. I know it's a broad statement, but challenging the norms and embracing a culture of asking the next question, I think will get you a long way.
Wonderful, wonderful. How about you, Adam?
Thanks again for having me. Appreciate it. As you move forward with your analytics projects, to think about those silos that have been created in the past, and design a team to try to break that down, to get ownership throughout the company, and really integrate it into your culture.
Wonderful. Thanks, Adam. And Dale.
All right. Tracking back to one of your our polling questions really was the tool question. Remember, people said that they're considering and maybe not sure what to do. You know, what I advise people to do is when you're looking at capability is where does most of your technology stack reside? If you're an Amazon company, right, you're using a lot of Amazon, AWS, data infrastructure, stick with some of their analytic tools. If you're Microsoft shop, go into Azure or Power BI. But there's lots of tools out there. Just find one that works with what the general IT platform that you guys are comfortable with. And you should start there. Then if you need a special tool, then go out there, head that direction.
Absolutely. No, I think great feedback from each of you. Thank you so much, Dave, Adam, and Dale. I'm just going to wrap up by just saying that, we've touched briefly today on, I think, several really important areas in data analytics. We certainly wanted to try and jump ourselves away from, I think, I call them the dreaded PPP letters, though COVID is still going to be a part of our lives for a good bit of time to come. So we look forward to following up with you on our next webinar and doing a deeper dive on some of the things we've talked about. We will share out just a general copy of today's questions and also the contact information. Please do reach out to myself, Dave, Dale, or Adam with any questions that we can assist with. We're happy to help. And a huge thank you as well to our HLB USA, HLB International group as well too. Thanks for those that are on board as well today. With that said, stay safe and well and have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.